My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Out of all the cartoons I have watched over the years, out of all the shows I have followed, and out of all the TV series I've been very passionate about, this one is, without a shadow of a doubt, my all-time favorite. Ever since this cartoon came into my life in late 2011, it's been taking me on a grand adventure that I never expected to embark on in the first place. Created by cartoon veteran Lauren Faust and premiering on October of 2010, this series follows the adventures of Twilight Sparkle, Pinkie Pie, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy, Rarity, Spike the Dragon, and all their other friends in Ponyville as they embark on countless adventures throughout the magical kingdom of Equestria, while along the way learning several things about friendship as well as life in general. By the time this cartoon came into my life, I was going through high school and had my own problems to deal with. And even before that, I already knew My Little Pony was a thing, having heard the title song a few times and seeing a few commercials of the toys on television. By this time though, I didn't really care much about it. Being a cartoon franchise with colorful ponies and giving the impression that it was for quote-unquote little girls, I had no interest in checking out the franchise as a whole anytime soon. But when Friendship is Magic came around, I was in for quite the surprise. In the years that followed, this show introduced me to a lot of engaging stories, amazing characters who've won their way into my heart, some really catchy songs, and strong lessons and morals that I've held onto for so long. In addition, I wasn't the only one who fell in love with this cartoon. Far from it, actually. When I discovered that a huge following of people have also started watching the show, these people of whom calling themselves bronies, I was pretty shocked to say the least. But it didn't take long at all for me to embrace this revelation and join the herd in enjoying what this cartoon had to offer. Never before have I expected something like this to become a big part of my life. But looking back on the experiences I've had with this cartoon, I am beyond thankful that it has. Like The Lion King before it, MLP has become a strong source of joy and happiness in my life that I always love looking back on and watching whenever I get the chance. Because of this, everyone who's helped with the show, from creators, writers, voice actors, songwriters, etc., has my eternal thanks and gratitude. I just can't thank them enough for all they've done. And now, as of 2019, Season 9 is on its way. Sadly, it was confirmed recently that this season is going to be the final season of the show. When I first heard this news, I was very, very somber. However, it's amazing to see how far this show has come. It's come a crazy long way with all of these seasons, a few spin-offs, and even a theatrical movie in 2017. So in tribute to this revelation, and in celebration of all that this cartoon has done, I have decided to look back on the duration of the show and see which episodes stuck out to me the most. This next series of videos will be talking about the top 10 episodes from each season that have become memorable parts of my journey with this cartoon, have had morals that I could easily relate to, or have just been enjoyable adventures in general. And so, to start this series of videos off, we are starting with Season 1, the season that launched the cartoon that made me happy, sad, laughing like crazy, and singing up a storm, to which it has solidified itself as my favorite cartoon of all. Here's to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and all it has done for me. Number 10. Winter Wrap-Up. Kicking off this list of Season 1 episodes is also the first of many winter-themed episodes that would show up throughout the show's run. Looking back on this season, and deciding which episodes to include, I decided that this one had elements to it that made it worthy of being given a place on this list. The episode features Twilight experiencing her first Winter Wrap-Up event, a yearly event that occurs on the last day of spring where the citizens of Ponyville collaborate together to clean up winter and make way for spring. This is a unique and interesting idea that I don't think I've seen in other cartoons, so it felt very fresh. Throughout the episode, Twilight, along with Spike, travels around Ponyville trying to find out how she can help in getting the town ready for spring, though each attempt she tries ends in failure. Some instances small, some comedic, but some pretty harsh. Twilight's situation here is something I can relate to and feel sorry for, since there have been times in my life where I've wondered what my place is in whatever I'm doing, although it's rare when I feel that way, though it's still a relatable situation. Fortunately, she manages to find her place by becoming the organizer for the event, and this pays off immensely, especially since prior to this winter wrap-up, Ponyville has never been on time with spring's arrival. The story of this episode and moral are both nicely done, but one thing that absolutely solidified this episode into this top 10 list is the song, Winter Wrap-Up. I know, I'm saying it a lot for this entry. This is one of the first songs of the show, and oh my god, it is so catchy and memorable. It's definitely one of my favorite songs in the show, and I just love singing it whenever it comes on. Number 9. The Ticketmaster. The first episode to air after the Season 1 premiere was The Ticketmaster, and it set up something big that was going to happen later on in the season. This trend of foreshadowing something would happen in later seasons too, with Season 4 being a pretty big example, but we'll get to that later. For Ticketmaster, the episode introduces a special party that happens in Canterlot yearly, the Grand Galloping Gala. This royal ball is set to celebrate Canterlot with the founding of Equestria. Twilight gets 2 tickets to this party from her mentor, Princess Celestia, and she is initially excited about this, but when she finds out that her friends, well minus Spike, also want to go, she becomes conflicted since she only has 2 tickets. This gets worse as the episode progresses when her friends try doing her favors in hopes of her giving them the ticket, though each attempt only ends in Twilight getting more frustrated. Some of her friends' efforts and actions, like rainbow dashes, are kind of annoying to me too, but in the end, they all agree to forfeit going to the gala after finding out their actions were giving Twilight much stress. Though in Rainbow Dash's case, it took a stern look from everyone to get her to back off, since at this point in the show, she was way too cocky. Seeing Twilight having to go through this conflict is sad, but it also goes to show that despite having just met these ponies, she's developed a strong loyalty to them and doesn't want to leave any out. Thankfully, she doesn't end up leaving any of them out, because at the end of the episode, after writing a letter to Celestia about deciding not to go without all of her friends, Twilight ends up getting 7 tickets, 1 for herself and each of her friends, including Spike. That was a very sweet ending to a great episode that, like the Season 1 premiere, would serve as a catalyst for further bonding with these characters. It's great stuff. Number 8. Stairmaster. Not every episode focuses entirely on the main 6. Occasionally, there will be episodes revolving around supporting characters that have strong relationships with the main 6 one way or another. The most common types of these episodes are those that focus on the Cutie Mark Crusaders, APPLEBUCK, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo. In Season 1, they formed their group together in the episode Call of the Cutie, after seeing they don't have their cutie marks yet. And from then on, we've been given episodes that have mostly been great learning experiences for the trio. Admittedly, some episodes have been better than others, and some have not been very good in the long run. But in Season 1, Stairmaster is one that I thought was really fun and enjoyable enough to be added to this list. However, the CMC are not the prime reason why I added this episode to the list. The biggest reason is because of Fluttershy. Out of all the main 6, Fluttershy is my favorite. Kind and adorable, but timid and sensitive, yet at the same time occasionally assertive, she's the one out of all the main 6 that I could relate to the most. Stairmaster is a nice early episode to feature some character development on her part. Here, she volunteers to babysit the CMC for the night while Rarity tries to complete a big fashion order. Since Fluttershy is good with animals, she assumes that she'll be just as good with kids. This, however, turns out to be a different story, for the CMC are energetic and determined to get their cutie marks, and at one point, they venture into the dangerous Everfree Forest to retrieve one of Fluttershy's runaway chickens. What makes this part of the episode more serious is the fact that a cockatrice is on the loose, and as Fluttershy says it best, it's a frightening creature with the head of a chicken and the body of a snake. And this beast also has the ability to turn other creatures into stone, as it is seen throughout this climax. Fortunately, using her own secret weapon, the the stare, Fluttershy manages to stop the cockatrice, protect the CMC, and order the beast to return everything that had turned to stone back to normal. This episode serves as the debut of Fluttershy's stare, and it would later play parts in some of the episodes yet to come. And this all around was a nice character development story for the sweet, innocent little Pegasus, whom would later go on to have moments that would truly stand a test of time in the show's run. Number 7. APPLEBUCK Season. While Fluttershy is my favorite of the main 6, Applejack is my second favorite. Honest, reliable, hardworking, and amicable, Applejack is another favorite character that I've enjoyed seeing get the spotlight in many episodes. One thing about Applejack that I've noticed throughout the show's run, though, is her occasional moments where she gets very stubborn. While some instances are understandable, others can sometimes make Applejack very hard to deal with. APPLEBUCK Season goes into the former, since in this one, Applejack is trying to harvest all the apples from the sweet apple acre trees before the season is done. Being the 4th episode of the show, it does a nice job of establishing Applejack's tendency to work hard, as well as show us how determined she is to get something done, even if it does have consequences. With her brother Big Macintosh unable to do the job, she tries to do this tough task on her own, ignoring any requests from Twilight to help her out. As the episode progresses, it becomes clear that her determination to do this alone is taking a toll on not just her, but others as well, since when she tries to help her friends, trouble occurs in Ponyville in more ways than one. Luckily, Applejack learns the importance of asking for help after Twilight has a talk with her, and from there the harvesting goes much more swimmingly. There have been times throughout my life where I too have tried working alone. Nowadays, it doesn't occur as much, yet it's still a relatable moral, and this episode did not make me think less of Applejack in the slightest. This was, after all, the 4th episode of the series, and it would be a while before we got used to each character and come to terms with their pros and cons. Number 6. Feeling Pinkie keen. Speaking of getting used to a character, Feeling Pinkie keen is one that focuses on Twilight and Pinkie Pie, and how Twilight's methods of fully understanding things clash with one of Pinkie's most unusual abilities. The resulting episode is one that has a lot of comedic moments, as well as more character development for some of the characters. Here, Twilight learns that Pinkie Pie has a strange ability to predict immediate outcomes in the future through twitches in her body. Pinkie calls this her Pinkie sense, and whether her tail is twitching, ears flopping, shoulder achy, or whole body is shaking, something is bound to happen very soon. Twilight is dismissive of this at first, and even tries to scientifically figure out how this is possible, but each attempt is unsuccessful, and in some cases really funny, even though it's at Twilight's expense. Ultimately, after a sense from Pinkie's entire body sends her, Twilight, Applejack, and Spike to Froggy Bottom Bog, where Fluttershy is transporting some frogs, that's where things get serious when Pinkie explains there's going to be an unexpected occurrence about to happen there. Or as Pinkie calls it, a doozy. And sure enough, a Hydra attacks the group, resulting in a chase across the swamp. But once that's all settled, Twilight gives up in frustration when Pinkie reveals that the Hydra was not what her Pinkie sense sensed, but instead being Twilight willingly accepting the Pinkie sense for what it is. All in all, this episode is really fun, and it teaches the lesson of accepting something, even if it makes little to no sense. Also, Twilight bursting into flames and fury near the end is endlessly fun to watch. Congratulations! Your Twilight Sparkle has evolved into Rabbitash. Number 5. Party of One. Now here is one of the very first episodes I remember seeing from the show, and oh my god, it definitely made an impact on me. In fact, I think this was my 3rd episode altogether. Party of One focuses on Pinkie Pie, and like Feeling Pinkie keen, strange things are bound to happen. In this case though, it's a little more emotional on her part, and to me, a bit creepier. For unexplained reasons, Pinkie's friends start avoiding her and her parties, which makes Pinkie very suspicious, to the point of being irritable and aggressive. This is where the comedic aspect of the episode sets in, where she tries to follow her friends around Ponyville and observe their suspicious actions, and later chasing the fast-flying Rainbow Dash around town, staring down a nervous Applejack at the Sweet Apple Acres barn, and finally, interrogating Spike about everything going on. However, things get sad for poor Pinkie Pie when she assumes that they no longer want to be her friends. This causes her mane to deflate and lose its curliness. If anything, this episode shows that as much of a fun-loving character Pinkie can be, she's just as emotionally sensitive and fragile, sort of like Tigger from the Winnie the Pooh franchise. This, however, elevates to weird and creepy when Pinkie suddenly goes crazy and hosts her own party with piles of turnips, rocks, lint, and flour, essentially having a mental breakdown. Fortunately, things quickly go back to normal for Pinkie Pie when she finds out that her friends were simply avoiding her to surprise her with a birthday party. Once again, the strong friendship between these ponies is shown with this heartwarming ending. And let's be happy that Pinkie really didn't replace her friends with those inanimate objects. Or in Rainbow Dash's case, a bucket of turnips. Number 4. The Cutie Mark Chronicles. As mentioned before, the Cutie Mark Crusaders were founded by APPLEBUCK, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo after they learned they didn't have their cutie marks, and episodes featuring them afterwards usually had them trying to find their talents and get their cutie marks. There came an episode, however, where they instead decided to learn how the main 6 got their cutie marks, and that episode was the Cutie Mark Chronicles. Throughout the episode, the CMC, well, mostly Scootaloo, tried to locate Rainbow Dash and learn how she got her cutie mark. But along the way, they end up learning one by one how the rest of the main 6 got their cutie marks. The episode features some sweet flashbacks for each of the main 6 and what they've done at certain points in their lives to get their cutie marks. For Applejack, it's how she tried to settle into Manhattan with her aunt and Uncle Orange, only to decide to go back to Sweet Apple Acres after feeling homesick. For Fluttershy, it's how she learned about the many animals she had never seen before, and how she learned how to communicate with them. For Rarity, it's how she became inspired to make beautiful dresses with gems after encountering a giant rock, and how she can track gems with her magic. For Twilight, it's how her use and study of magic gave her the position of being Princess Celestia's protege. For Pinkie Pie, it's how she learned how to make others happy by throwing parties. And finally, for Rainbow Dash, it's how her determination to win a race against 2 bullies made her perform the legendary sonic RARNBOOM. Each flashback is structured nicely and gives us a glimpse of the main 6's individual pasts. But what makes this episode extra special is how Rainbow Dash's RARNBOOM caused the rest of the main 6 to get their cutie marks in some way. This fascinates everyone and makes them see that they had a special connection with each other even before they became the best of friends. Definitely a sweet episode to look back on. Number 3. Friendship is Magic, Parts 1 and 2. Ah yes, the adventure that started it all. When thinking up this list, I could not include just one part of the Season 1 premiere without including the other. So I decided to go with both Part 1 and 2 of Friendship is Magic. Starting with Part 1, also known as Mare in the Moon, the episode introduces everything, from the Kingdom of Equestria, a history between Celestia and her confrontation with Luna's evil side Nightmare Moon, and most importantly of all, the characters on whom this series is about. Now the main focus is on Twilight Sparkle, Celestia's student, and how she is sent to Ponyville to oversee the preparations for the Summer Sun celebration. Along the way, she meets each of the ponies that will later form together to become the main 6, and they all offer their hooves of friendship to Twilight and Spike. But Twilight is focused on something else, however. She believes that Nightmare Moon, having been banished to the moon by Celestia 1,000 years ago, will return and bring an eternal night to the kingdom. Because of this, she declines any offers of friendship, despite their warm welcomes. Unfortunately, by the end of the episode, Twilight's worries are well confirmed, as Nightmare Moon does indeed come back to Equestria and vow to bring a never-ending night to the land. This episode does a great job in setting the stage for not just the next episode, but also the whole show and what it has to offer. As for Part 2, also known as The Elements of Harmony, it picks up right where Part 1 ended, with Nightmare Moon beginning her reign over Equestria. Confronted by the rest of the main 6, Twilight confesses that she knew everything about Nightmare Moon's prophesied return, and upon learning that the elements of harmony can be of help in defeating her, the six set out to find them in the dark Everfree Forest. This brings out an adventure feel to the episode that is fun to watch, and makes us get to know each character more. This also provides nice foreshadowing for the big climax, because as the journey progresses, each pony accompanying Twilight displays a personality trait that matches one of the elements of harmony: honesty, kindness, laughter, generosity, and loyalty. Twilight ultimately comes to realize that she and her new friends represent the elements during their final confrontation with Nightmare Moon, especially when Twilight accepts the other five as her friends, therefore unlocking the sixth element, the element of magic. With this, Nightmare Moon is defeated and reverted back to her original form, Princess Luna. With a tearful reunion between Celestia and Luna, a celebration party in Ponyville, and Celestia giving Twilight the mission to study the magic of friendship in Ponyville, the ending of this episode is so sweet, and it further helps set the stage for the adventures these characters will embark on in future episodes. To sum up, Friendship is Magic was a great two-part episode to start the cartoon that would lead to great adventures, memorable moments, great new characters entering the spotlight, a huge fandom coming together to embrace the show's wonderful message of friendship, and countless other blessings. Oh my gosh, what a great start. Number 2. A Dog and Pony Show. As I've already said, Season 1 was great for featuring episodes that focused on each main six member and how they won their ways into the hearts of the bronies. For Rarity, one of her crowning moments of awesomeness in this season was undoubtedly A Dog and Pony Show. Looking back on this episode, it most certainly needed to be included in this list. This episode features Rarity getting kidnapped by a gang of diamond dogs while she's out hunting for gems with Spike for a dress for Sapphire Shores. Prior to this episode, Rarity was depicted as a ladylike pony with a stern demeanor when it came to fashion and keeping herself postured and cleaned. This could have easily made her the least popular of the main six, but there were subtle moments where there was a lot more to her than just that, such as her displaying a capability to fight in Friendship is Magic Part 2, but I would say all of that was foreshadowing of what was to come in this episode. In fact, this episode took Rarity's skills to a whole new level, and the result was an episode that was downright hilarious and awesome at the same time. While Rarity is trapped underground, and while the Diamond Dogs try to force her to find the gems, Rarity puts her ladylike attitude to the forefront, and this drives the Diamond Dogs insane, especially when she whines. Dear God, when she starts whining to the dogs for kidnapping her and forcing her to do all their work, things get so funny that it can easily make someone who's watched the show for years have belly laughs. Trust me, that's happened to me many times. And the best part of this whole thing is that she intended to do this to them all along in order to drive them nuts and let her go. This episode shows how much of a badass Rarity can be when the situation calls for it, and to this day, I still consider it one of the greatest Rarity episodes in the whole show. Now, we've made it to number 1 on this list, but before we get there, let me just say that this whole list is based on my own opinion, and I humbly respect everyone else's regarding this season's episodes. Also, I would like to give an honorable mention to one episode in particular, Sonic RARNBOOM. This was a fun episode revolving around Rainbow Dash being able to master the art of doing a Sonic RARNBOOM. In doing this, she was able to save Rarity and the Wonderbolts from a big fall, and this gave Fluttershy the enthusiasm and excitement she needed in order to cheer loudly for Rainbow Dash. It may have been knocked back by some competition, and some of Rarity's actions in that episode may have been seriously questionable, like her stealing the spotlight with her temporary wings, but I had to give a shout out to this episode regardless. But anyways, with that said, it's time to get to the big moment here. The number 1 best episode from Season 1 is... The Best Night Ever. Out of all the episodes that were shown in Season 1, out of all the adventures we've seen with the main 6 as of now, and out of all the hilarious moments we've seen with each of the characters, Best Night Ever holds a very special place in my heart. For starters, I remember this episode as the second episode from the whole show that I've ever watched when I started getting into the show, and it was a definite factor as to why I stuck around with the cartoon before claiming it to be my favorite of all time. This episode is the season finale, and after being foreshadowed in the Ticketmaster, we finally get to see the main six go to the Grand Galloping Gala in Canterlot. Each pony is supremely excited for what's to happen, since they all have something special they want to accomplish. But once they reach the gala, things don't exactly turn out the way they hoped. Determined to make this the best night ever, as they say, as well as breaking the fourth wall by referencing the title of the episode, things get crazy when their attempts to accomplish their goals get out of hand. Or hoof. And this leads to pure hilarity. I actually remember being legitimately surprised with how funny this episode turned out to be, and how it made me want to come back and see more of what this cartoon had to offer. Probably the most infamous moment in this episode that had me laughing so hard was when Fluttershy started going crazy over trying to befriend the garden animals. She starts losing her calm, peaceful approach and slowly descends into a bit of a mental breakdown, similar to that of Pinkie Pie's in Party of One, but much more scary and creepy. She even goes so far as to try to trap them in a net trap, only to fail horribly, and by the end of the episode, as things at the gala are already going nuts due to the main six's actions, she's completely lost her cool and shouts, "You're going to love me!" Oh my god, that was just too much for me. Looking back on this episode, seeing Fluttershy like this is quite a shock, and this was only the season 1 finale. In later episodes, she did learn to slowly come out of her shell and become more assertive, but Jesus Christ! Did she blow a gasket here or what? Oh boy. But the comedy wasn't the only thing that made this episode special to me. Another thing that had me glued was the song, At the Gala. Similar to Winter Wrap-Up, this was one of the first songs I've ever listened to from the show. In fact, looking back on my experience, this was actually the first song I've ever listened to from the cartoon, and it did not disappoint. It was catchy, had each of the main six with a singing part, and it was really fun too. But if there's one other thing that most definitely won me over into checking out more episodes, it would have to be the many references to classic movies and fairy tales. Throughout the episode, I was bombarded with references to movies like Cinderella, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Wizard of Oz. Heck, even Disney's Hercules got referenced when Rainbow Dash tried to prevent the golden statue from falling, only to accidentally knock over some heavy pillars while she's trying to keep the statue stable on her back. I'm sure there were other references to classic films, but those were the ones that stuck out to me the most. But there was also the scene during At the Gala, where Celestia flies over the Canterlot Castle with an arc of twinkles behind her. It was just like the classic Walt Disney Pictures title sequence that I grew up with, so seeing that in MLP truly was something. And finally, there's the moral of the episode. After the main six rendezvous with Spike at a donut shop, and after getting no hard feelings from Celestia, they come to agree that even if it wasn't really what they had hoped for, their night was still really fun because they were having a fun time together. And this more than made up for all the shenanigans that occurred during the gala. This is something I can relate to as well, since whenever I hang out with friends, be it in real life or online, just being with them and having a good time is what sells the moment as something really fun. Overall, the best night ever is an awesome episode from Season 1, and one that I proudly proclaim as my favorite from the season. With its fun story, great songs, hilarious comic relief, and classic references to movies I'm familiar with, it's a great episode that I most absolutely recommend if you're getting into MLP. It definitely helped shape me into checking out more of what My Little Pony Friendship is Magic had to offer. But this was only the beginning. The following seasons also had wonderful surprises in store, and further helped reinforce this show as my favorite cartoon ever. As I said earlier, God bless you, Lauren Faust, and everyone else for making this show. You forever have my gratitude. And with that said, this officially wraps up the top 10 episodes from Season 1. This, however, is just the beginning. There are going to be more top 10 videos for the later seasons coming up soon, so stay tuned for those. And until then, this is KGrove94 signing off, and wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. Catch you guys later.